Welcome to part 3. In the last video, I went over briefly how to use the jQuery validate plugin. However, it's important to note that jQuery is obviously JavaScript, and we want to make sure that any validation that we do is not entirely dependent only on client-side validation. Keep in mind that the visitor can easily see any JavaScript code, and it does again have the potential to disable JavaScript entirely if he or she so chooses. So we want to make sure that our form is still safe and secure, and our form is properly validated even if JavaScript is turned off for some reason. The first thing I'm going to do with this form is I want to go ahead and make sure we can display the values of our various inputs using PHP, and also any error messages as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add the value, and within that I'm going to add a PHP code block. I'm going to echo out form, and this one I'm going to call name. And this variable will be part of a larger array, and it's going to be called form. And let me go ahead and copy and paste this element like so, and then I won't copy the value section, but I do want to copy the PHP, and I'm going to place it within the opening and closing text area tags. Okay, and then let me go through and rename everything. So this one is going to be phone. This one will be fax, email, and finally comments. Okay, so that will save the value within these inputs. So for example, if the user inputs something incorrectly and he submits the form, instead of coming back to a blank form, we can go ahead and save whatever he entered. Just makes things a little bit easier on the end user. In addition, we want to be able to show error messages. So after our inputs, I'm going to do another PHP code block, and I'm going to echo out a variable that I'm going to call error. And like form, it'll be an array with several different items, and this one will be form name. And again, I'm just going to copy and paste it. I only want to include this wherever we have a field that we need to have some sort of validation on. So fax we're leaving alone, that's an optional field, so I'll delete it. Okay, like so. And then again, we want to change the variable name. So this is error name, this one will be phone, and this one will be email. Okay, so let's save it and take a look. And the first thing you'll notice is we have some sort of error messages, specifically undefined variable. And this is because we haven't actually set these variables anywhere. We haven't given them a null value at all. They just don't hold anything at the moment. So it'll generate an error unless we set it to something specific. Now there are multiple ways we can do this. We could potentially change all of these instances. Instead of just echoing out the form, we're going to place it within an if statement, and we're going to check if this variable is set first. So if is set, form name, okay, we could do something like that, but the simple fact is we would have to copy and paste this for every single time we wanted to echo out a variable. And that seems like a little bit too much extra code for my liking. It's a little bit too messy, and I would try to place as little PHP code within this form file as I can. So let me go ahead and undo what I just did there. Okay, so got this saved, and we're going to approach this slightly differently. This file we're going to call form, and I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this one contact.php. And what I'm going to do is contact is going to hold most of my PHP code, all the business logic, and then whenever the actual form is required to display to the end user, I'm going to use an include. So let me get started on this. And this will help us fix the issue that we were having with these variables being undefined. So I have got my opening PHP tag, and I'm going to start out by defining a couple of variables. The first variable I'm going to define is error open. Like this. And we're going to specify what will be displayed when we get an error message. In my case, I want to wrap the error message with the label, and I'm going to assign it a class of error, like so. So that'll be the opening tag, and then I'll also add error close. There we go. And then we have a couple more variables that I want to set. I want to set a valid form. This will be a Boolean. I'm going to set it to true to start with. And then also a redirect variable. And this is going to hold where we want this form to redirect to if it's submitted successfully. In our case, I've got a success page set up. So I'm going to set it up to go to success.php. And then, like we were discussing, I want to make sure that we don't have an issue with these particular variables. So let's go ahead and set them. The way I've approached it is I'm setting up two arrays. I'm going to call the first one form elements. And it's going to hold the names of all our different form elements. It's going to hold name, phone, fax, email, and comments. Like so. And then I also want to set up another array. In this case, we're going to hold all the elements that need to be validated in some way. I'm going to call this one required. And this array only has 3 elements that need to be validated, in this case name, phone, and email. And we want to set a couple things. No matter what we do with this contact.php page, we want to make sure that these error variables start out as blank. So I'm going to use a for each loop for that. For each. And I'm going to use required as require. So this will loop through each of these individual items, and we're going to go ahead and set error require like so. So what this will do is this is going to loop 3 times. It's going to loop once through for name, and the first time it'll set error name equals nothing. Next time it'll set error phone equals nothing, etc. So this is a simple way, just a quick loop, and it saves me from doing multiple of name and just listing them all out one by one like so. Okay, so I got that saved. Important thing that we want to check is we want to make sure if our form is submitted. So if is set, and we're going to check the post variable, specifically submit, and if the submit button has been clicked and the form has been submitted, we want to go ahead and process the form. Otherwise, we need to display the form. And we'll do that with an include. Excuse me, this needs to be form.php, like so. Okay, so let's go ahead and preview contact.php now. So notice a couple of the error messages went away. That's just for comparison's sake. You notice we have undefined variables here. So a couple of those went away, but we still have undefined variables for each of the values within these inputs. So all we have to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this for each loop. I'm going to place it here. Just tab it in. And instead of looping through each of the required items, I'm going to loop through each of the form elements. And this will need to be set to form. Okay, so what this means is if the form has not been submitted yet, we're going to go ahead, loop through each of the form items and set their values to nothing. So the user hasn't inputted anything yet, and then we'll display the form. So let me save this, and let's take a look and see what we have. Looks like we have a blank form. And if you enter anything, you'll notice our form validation that we were working on, the JavaScript based validation, isn't working anymore. If you go back and preview this, the reason why is I changed the links, so it links to a file that no longer exists. Okay, so this is the start, and follow along in the next video where I'll start implementing more PHP.